customer and product profitability using Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. During these challenging times, businesses are being hit with a high level of uncertainty as they plan their financial forecasts. Analyzing your customer and product profitability can help set a strategic direction for you and your team as you navigate through these uncertain times. By developing a complete customer and product profitability analysis, businesses are able to clearly see areas of financial growth and loss over a set period of time, allowing your team to drill down and focus on the areas that need the most attention. Thank you for joining us today for a free webinar as we demo how you can streamline customer and product profitability using out-of-the-box functionality within D365 for finance and operations. During this webinar, we will demo how you can set up and configure your D365 for finance and operations to provide reporting and Power BI analytics based on your specific financial dimensions. All fundamentals of this solution will apply to Dynamics AX 2012 as well. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation.
Hello, how you doing out there? My name is Jim Lawhead. I am a Senior Solutions Architect with GraVoc. Today, we have the opportunity to give you a demonstration on D365 Finance and Operations. We're going to talk about a customer profitability and product profitability analysis, and we hope you find this interesting. We appreciate your time. Thanks for taking time to watch the seminar, and we'll be answering questions at the end of the seminar. So let me go to the presentation. Okay, so we have on the screen here our blueprint or our roadmap to today's presentation. As I stated earlier, we're going to be presenting customer and item profitability analysis solution using the D365 Finance and Operation modules. Today's presentation will feature financial dimensions as the central element of the solution. So you can see financial dimensions here in the center at the top bar. Everything we demonstrate today is using a standard out-of-the-box functionality of D365 features, with the exception of some of the integration to the data in the Power BI, which we'll do at the end of today's presentation. In addition, all of the elements of the solution we're demonstrating today on D365 platform apply equally as well to those users that are on AX 2012. So we wanted to point that out. So as I mentioned earlier, today we have on our screen what I'm calling our blueprint to the solution. The business need that we're trying to solve is that for those organizations that need better customer and product profitability analysis. In an organization, a sales team has a need for better sales forecasting to help them analyze the performance of their customers and business segments. Improved analysis will help them determine the value and success of their annual customer programs and marketing campaigns. Finance and operation groups need to determine the profitability of customers and items so they can allocate customer support, product design, and production resources to achieve the most optimal results. In most organizations, the revenue, costs, and expenses as they relate to the sale of products and services to a customer originate from a number of sources. A lot of the costs associated with a customer or product are not strictly generated from a sales order. Vendors may provide professional services in the areas of product design or marketing. Internally, finance may allocate departmental expenses to customers or accrue annual program allowances through GL journal entries. To create budgets and forecasts of customer sales by products can sometimes be a laborious process that requires a great deal of manual intervention to produce. So today we're going to show you a solution laid out here in our diagram, implementing financial dimensions so we can track the revenue and expense associated with a customer product as a transaction moves through the system and ultimately posts to the general ledger. You can see that in our diagram here. The diagram is laid out in the upper top two blue bars as our setup and configuration and master files. That lays the foundation, the groundwork for our solution. The yellow bar is all the transaction processing that will feed into the general ledger. And then the last bar will be reporting analysis that we can generate from that data. So talking about financial dimensions just as a concept is financial dimensions can be set up and configured in three ways. One, they can be organization operating units like legal entities, business units, departments, or cost centers. They can also be standard values that exist in the system, like customers, items, vendor groups, etc. Or you can create custom dimensions that you define the values for. Customer segments, regions, and product groups can be part of that. We're going to now flip over to our AX or our D365 application to take a look at some of these things we're talking about. The first thing we want to do is look at our main accounts, okay? So we're going to take a look at main accounts because D365 configuration is a little bit different than typical mid-market systems. If you're a D365 current user, AX user, you understand this process. So here we have our main accounts, or natural accounts as some people would know as, for today's demo. And you can see we have balance sheet accounts, sales accounts, cost of goods sold accounts, and expense accounts, okay? As we look into how this relates to dimensions, we're going to take a look at a journal entry and see how that is constructed, okay? So if I take a look at this journal entry, and I can look at the lines here, you can see that on my first account, 1,300, okay? That is an inventory account, and it's a balance sheet account, and I only have the main account. If I go down to my next account, it highlights a main account of Marketing Co-op and a customer ID of Walmart. We're going to show you how we apply those dimensions from customers and items. But this is how we construct the accounts. And on my last account here, at a sales account, I have the 4,000 for series. I have the 100,000 for the customer, and I have the item code. So today's demo, we're going to show you how you flip back, apply those. So if I flip back to my blueprint, you see I have my financial dimensions as the centerpiece, and it's using a main account as the core value, and then it's applying the customer and item dimensions to construct an account string as it feeds through these transaction processes. Okay, so that is the core foundation of the solution. So we're not going to get into a lot of the setup and configuration because most of you who are AX users are familiar with that. Today's more of a demonstration of the powerful capabilities that do exist when we apply these configurations correctly. So now we've looked at the how we construct a main account. Now we want to look at how do we get that onto a customer or an item. So let's look at our list of customers. So as it brings up the customer list, you see I have a grid view here, and I have an account. I showed that earlier, 100,000 is Best Buy. And each account can have properties as we group the customers or identify the customers. So we have a customer group. These are all major accounts. We have a business segment, retail, online, and club, we're going to track today. And we have sales groups. So these are different salespeople that are involved in selling of the customer. And we have other different information here. That displays commission groups, states, phone, etc. So the one thing that you want to keep in mind as we move through this demo is just by applying a customer dimension on a transaction, when we get into our Power BI analytics, we can then link the properties of this customer, whether customer group or segment or sales group, back to the originating transaction. So just the dimension for customers and items allows us a very powerful analytical tool as we move through the data. So if I click on one of my accounts, let's click on the Best Buy account and drill that up. I just want to show you there's a number of fast tabs that we define the properties of the customer. And one of those tabs is the financial dimensions. So here's where we default that dimension. So the default dimension for this customer is 100,000, which is the customer ID. And then there's no default for the item. We're going to get that one from the product. Okay, so that's just a little overview of the customer so you can see as we move through how transactions inherit these dimensions from the master files. Now we're going to go take a look at our products. So we're going to go take a look at our released products, or what we know as items. Now, products are going to be similar to the customers in that we have an item number, a product name, we have a vendor or brand that we purchase it from. We have a category that we can track, okay? In today's demo, we're going to feature an electronics distributor. We have headphones, we have tablets, we have laptops, speakers. We have buyer and product managers. So again, just like the customers, by using the item dimension, we can now drill down based on and look at product manager performance, or product managers can analyze their product lines. We can analyze category performance, and we'll see that as we move through the system. We have a search name and different other properties of that item. So if we click on an item, applying a dimension to an item works similar to applying an item, a dimension to a customer. So again, I have a number of what we call fast tabs to apply different properties for that item. And in the default financial dimensions, I don't have a customer for the item, but I have a default item for the tablet. Okay, so that is a quick overview on how we are going to connect the dots between the customers and items, main accounts, and how they inherit through these transactions. Okay, so you can see the customers and items feed into sales order. Now, sales order is going to be our primary transaction to provide these details of the transactions, but also you saw we have vendor invoices, GL, general customer payments, where we can apply the dimensions as well. Okay, like I said earlier, typically it's very difficult to get all the data that relates to the sale of a product or service because they're coming from different parts of the organization. But by using dimensions, we can consolidate those all and they feed into the general ledger, which will become a data warehouse. So it's a bit of a paradigm shift to look at finance as the data warehouse. Okay, but that's how we can get a holistic 360-degree view of all the expenses and revenues and costs associated with a customer and a product. Okay, so now let's take a look at what a sales order looks like. Okay, so the sales order, we go back to my recent menu, our sales orders, that is the driving force of creating the costs and the revenues for customers and items. So you can see I have a list of a number of sales orders I've already processed. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and take a look at sales order number 38, which is for the customer at Best Buy. So I'm going to drill on the Best Buy sales order, and that's loading that sales order up. And we'll take a quick look at how sales order inherits those dimensions. Okay. So here we have our header information, and this gives us, our delivery addresses, our ship dates, customer references, requisition numbers, etc. And as I scroll down through here, I see all my line items, okay, that I sold to this customer on the sales order. So you can see that Apple iPad Pro tablet we showed earlier. We have a product name. We have that sales category we talked about. And if we scroll over, we see how many we sold at what unit price, at what net amount. And we also have an estimated margin based on the cost of the item. Now, if we look at the detail, each line that we're highlighted on has a detail pane at the bottom of the screen. And you can see a lot of different information about that particular line. So you can look at different setup issues, okay, or setup items. You can see that commission group. You can see created. We can look at the financial dimensions, which is, the key thing we're trying to focus on today. So as we highlight the financial dimensions, you can see here that the default financial dimensions on the sales order, it inherited the customer ID for Best Buy, the 100,000, and it inherited the Apple item ID for the tablet. So as we post this transaction through the system, that GL account string will be constructed based on that particular dimension set. Okay, so let's take a look at what that might look like. If we go up to our invoice tab here and we look at journals, this one's already posted. We're not going to go through creating and posting journal entry or sales orders. Most of you already know how to do that. Okay, but we do want to look at what's the impact of a sales order on the general ledger, on these dimensions, that we can set up this data that we can extract later for reporting and analytics. Okay, so if I look at the voucher that this invoice created, this is going to be interesting. So this is all the information that posted to the general ledger. You can see I have a journal number, a voucher number, a date. You see a ledger account. This is the key. So, for example, our inventory and accounts receivable, our balance sheet accounts have no dimensions on them. But our sales and cost of goods sold, you see, if I highlight there, it has my customer and my item, similar to what we showed you on the journal entry screen. So this is the GL account string that gets constructed from a main account, a customer dimension, and an item dimension. And as I scroll through here, you see even sales commissions are highlighted as well. The sales commission payable is not. And as I scroll over, I'll see the amounts, posting types, and also description of the sales order. So that's the sales order posted to the general ledger. So we always link the sales order back to those GL accounts. Okay, so that's pretty nice. I'm going to close that out. And as I close that out and I refer back to my diagram, my blueprint, you see, so that sales order is now going to post to our data layer, our green layer, which is our GL ledger voucher transactions. Okay. And like I said earlier, we're going to have vendor invoices that may have costs associated with an item or a customer, GL periodic journals or what are commonly known as recurring journals, and also customer payments. So let's go back to the D365 application. We're going to exit out of that sales order. We're going to take a look at the voucher transactions and how all that data from those other elements feeds into that. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So if I look at voucher transactions, so voucher transactions is that green data layer where all these transactions are going to end up. All right, so we have a number of different filters to look at. And when we look at that, it typically brings up previously query used. So it remembers the last inputs that you put in. But I can also create predefined queries. Okay, so for example, let's say I wanted to look at vendor invoices. I'm going to look at vendor invoices. I'm not going to go through the process of keying in invoices and payments and journals just because of time constraints, but we're going to show you how the data ends up in the GL. So here's an example of some vendor invoices that have been posted. You can see the AP voucher number, and they have gone to either merchandising, sales commissions, or product design. And if I scroll over here, you can see I have a description: Kuno Web Services, marketing SEO for Amazon. So that, like I said earlier, there's a number of expenses that can be costed to a product or a customer or both that typically you don't see on a typical item profitability or customer profitability because you're just looking at the sales order, cost of goods sold, gross margin information. So this is, like I said earlier, kind of a paradigm shift that we can get all this data to the general ledger. Okay, and as you can see, is here for these types of accounts, we're just going with a main account and customer. We can't really cost out the merchandising to an item, so we're costing out the Best Buy in general. Okay, so if I close that, that's a quick look at the vendor invoices, which is one of those transaction layers. And if we come back in and we're going to relaunch that particular screen, we'll look at some of the recurring journals. We call them recurring journals, or periodic journals, I should say. We call them periodic journals. A lot of people know them as recurring journals. So when you're dealing with customers like Best Buy and Amazon, you typically have customer programs, typically based on an annual basis, that are used to track sales volume or quantity volume. And customers will take allowances for those, but you typically don't true those up or reconcile those on a quarterly or maybe 6 months or annual basis. So you want to post, though, the estimated expense of those co-op dollars or annual programs, so your current financials give you a relatively accurate state. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our periodic marketing journals. And because the dimensions are involved in this, it can be a complex operation to key in all your customer programs and make sure the dimensions are in the right place. But we can create periodic journals. As you see, when we post those journals, we can see that marketing co-op, I have it to Best Buy, I have it to 1100 is Walmart, and I have it to Costco, 1300 is Costco. And you can see I posted some in January and some in February. So this is an example of, I have my description, marketing co-op. So if I need to go reconcile an account, I know what that was posted for. And as we true that up, we reconcile those expense accounts and allowance accounts. So there are two examples of how we process the data from what we would call the subledgers, accounts payable, general ledger, into the general ledger, and still retain those dimensions that are going to give us this profitability reporting that we'll be taking a look at here shortly. Okay, so now that we've looked at the transactions, now let's look at how do we pull this data out. Okay, so there's a number of ways. If we go back to our roadmap or blueprint, we put on the reporting and analytics layer 5 components. We have this called GL inquiries. Well, these are inquiries within D365 that can slice and dice this data that we can output to Excel, and we'll take a look at some of that. We also have, Microsoft has a management reporter application. This is designed specifically for complex financial statements. Many of you might be using it today. It's very powerful when you have dimensions set up in the right way and how we can extract and analyze and report on this data. In addition, we have budgeting. We're going to take a quick look at budgeting because an outgrowth of the ability to track these products and items as dimensions is the fact that now we have the data to create sales forecasting or quotas when it might be very difficult to do otherwise because it's hard to measure that. So we'll show you how the customer item profitability using dimensions will allow that to be very easy. Then lastly, at the end, we're going to take a look at Power BI. Okay, Power BI is a powerful tool for slicing and dicing and analyzing your data and looking at visuals. And like I said, we can leverage some of those properties of customers and items back to the GL based on those dimensions of customer ID and product ID. Okay, so let's flip back to our D365 environment. The one thing that I do want to show you here is the budgeting. Okay, we're not going to get into how we actually create a budget, but let's look at our budget analysis. Okay, because this is pretty powerful stuff right here. Okay, like I said, a lot of people don't think about finance being the central repository for the data, but when you use this type of a scenario, it becomes that. So here's our budget analysis. We've already created some budgets. Now I want to look at previous activity in previous periods. So D365 has a nice feature called date intervals where we can define different date intervals. So I don't have to remember keying in dates. So for example, if I want to look at February, that would be previous period minus 3. You see when I chose that interval, it automatically put the from date and to date for February. Now, we also have a thing called financial dimension sets. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. It's a way to combine the dimensions so that I can drill down and slice and dice on the data that I want to look at in different views. So for example, maybe I just want to look at the main account and the customer. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to use the revenue budget and I'm going to calculate my balances. So as this processes, the nice thing that it does is here is it's going to roll up all those item sales accounts and cost of goods sold accounts just to the customer level. So if we just want to look at a customer level, maybe we're just want to analyze that customer at the highest level, their budget, we can see that data. Okay. So for example, you can look at here we have sales, we have Best Buy, and we have our original estimate and our actual revenues percent realized 100. Same with Walmart, Amazon, and Costco. Okay. And so that is a revenue budget. You see there, very nice, okay, that we can track that. So now if we want to drill down a little bit deeper, we can choose a new dimension set. We're going to come down and choose our main and customer plus item. And we have that same data interval, so we'll leave that there, even though I highlighted that field, okay, which is the same data interval, month of February. And then we are going to calculate the balances. And it's going to go out there and look at the main plus the customer plus item and assign all that information, or calculate that information, I should say. So now you see here, it took the detail of the main account, the customer, and it added the item. So if I look at that item, I see that Apple iPad, we estimated 40,000, and we actually had 100,000 of 40,000 revenue, so we realized that 100%. So that's pretty nice here. So we have the main account, the customer, and the item. So think about that. With those three pieces of information, now we can do a lot of nice analytics. And these trial balances, they can be, or the budget analysis and the trial balance can both be outputted to spreadsheets, okay? Let's take a look at that trial balance. So now we're just going to choose our trial balance. And the trial balance works similar, okay? We have a to and from, we have our data interval, we have our main customer and item, and we're going to do calculate balances. That's going to go out and search our trial balance. Okay. So if we look at our items, it's I wanted to collapse that action pane to give us a little bit more real estate. Okay, it shows, you see the main account, the inventory accounts, the balance sheet accounts do not have a customer and item. But as we come down into the sales accounts, we have the customer and the item. And what it does with the name is it constructs the name from the main account name, the customer name, and the item product, what we call the short name. Okay, you see we have an opening balance, debit, credit, closing balance, typical of a trial balance. And all this data can be opened up and exported to Excel for analysis. And let's just take a look at what that looks like, okay? So, for example, here's my trial balance, okay, outputted. So you see I got my main account, my customer, my item, my opening balance, debits, credits, and I added a column for transaction amount, which is credit minus debit, so I can look at profitability. And then most finance people like pivot tables, so I've already created a pivot. And what's cool about this is now that you have dimensions, I can put my accounts in a row, and I can put my customer dimensions in a column. So I can easily look at, okay, how does each customer compare on profitability? And you see that Amazon or Best Buy gave us the most profitability, Amazon next, Walmart, and then Costco. Okay, so this is a nice way to analyze your customer profitability when you're looking at where you want to allocate your resources. So that is the trial balance. We looked a little bit at the budgeting. Now the last reporting tool, if we go back to our blueprint, is Management Reporter. Okay, we are going to get into the Power BI a little bit later. So the Management Reporter, again, I talked about that just briefly. That is the financial reporting application that ships with most Microsoft products, including Dynamics GP and NAV and other products that we at GraVoc represent, but it also is synced with D365. So if I went and looked at the Management Reporter, the nice thing about the Management Reporter is finance people are familiar with this, is that the Management Reporter allows you to develop complex financial statements. Okay, so if we looked at that within AX, I go to my financial reports. We're not going to launch MR today just for time constraints, but we have a number of reports that are generated in MR, and we also created some for today's demo. Okay, so when you generate a report, you can run them on schedules. It will show when the report date is. That's the date that you're doing the report through and when it was generated. So I must have been up late last night. Okay, so demo by customer columns. Let's just take a quick look at that one. So if I launch that report, what it does is it gives me I showed earlier how you can kind of matrix these dimensions. So the premise of the solution came from a customer requirement that needed to do customer profitability analysis. Essentially, they wanted an income statement by customer. Okay, and that is how we're feeding all this data from these submodules, subledger modules into the GL so that we report on this. So this is really cool. This is I'm going to zoom this out just a tad. Okay, let's take a look here. I'm going to go to 75% just so we can see it a little bit better. The numbers might be a little bit blurry, but I just want to be able to show you. So here we have our gross revenues. Okay, we see 990,000 for the whole company, and then each of our major accounts are broken down. Then we have our revenue reductions, okay? And you can see that we have our annual customer programs, and this is where you can put other allowance types. And then we have our total deductions, and we look at a percentage, so we can compare a percentage. So we see Amazon has more deductions, okay? Then we get to our cost of goods sold. We have our total cost of goods sold. Then we look at our gross margin. So at the company level, we were 51%, and then each customer is fairly close. And then we look at our expenses. So that is really cool because that is a quick snapshot of comparison from the different customers, our primary major customers, analyzing how they perform together. Now, what we want to do is we want to take a look at some other reports that have already been generated. So if you're an MR user, you understand how powerful that is. So this is that dimension. I'm going to make this a little bit better. Okay, this is that dimension report I just showed you. Okay, so customer income statement by customer. We can also look at a dimensions income statement by what's called a reporting tree. Now, if you understand what a reporting tree is a way to group business units together. So it could be a department, it could be a cost center, it could be customers. So in this case, I created a income statement for each customer, and then we business or the reporting tree in each customer. So you can see as I scroll down here, I have each page for, now there's Best Buy, and I have February and year to date, there's Walmart. Okay, so that's kind of nice. So that's just a simple report taking the data that we've built, and we can run that financial statement for each customer. Now it gets really cool because we've added the products and the items as a dimension, which a lot of people don't think about doing. Now look at this. So here, this is a cool report. Okay, we're going to go to actual size. Okay, so here what I've done is I've created a matrix, because in MR, if you're familiar with it, any dimension can be a row or a column. MR is basically Excel on steroids that can do complex groupings and analyses. Okay. So here we have the item list. So here's all those items: the Apple tablet, Apple laptop, Bose speakers, Dell laptops. And then we have that revenue budget that we showed you earlier on our budget control screen. We have the actual revenue coming from the trial balance. We have a variance, if any. We have a percentage of the budget, okay? And then we have the cost of goods sold, which is, again, coming from our actual cost. And then we have a gross margin per item, okay? So that is pretty cool. So we can do some of this slicing and dicing on Power BI, but within Management Reporter, you can have these preset reports that are not hard to build, okay? Once you have the data there, okay? And then here is, again, I use the reporting tree concept. So this is summary of all units. Now, if I page down here, I can look at Best Buy individually and look at their margins. I can look at Walmart individually. And this is a great way for not only the finance people to analyze the numbers, but for your product managers, the people who are managing those products, okay? So for example, here, I'm not selling any of this Sony speaker to Amazon for whatever the reason, okay? Maybe we find out why. Maybe it's a newer product. Maybe it's not in stock. Who knows, okay? In addition, I can also, the sales manager or the customer relationship managers can analyze by company. So I stated earlier that this solution, by using dimensions and customers, can impact multiple parts of the organization that you normally might not think about: sales teams and product manager teams. Okay, so very cool stuff. So that kind of wraps up our demonstration portion of the system. So I just want to kind of recap what we showed you. We showed you the financial dimensions, setup configuration, along with the master files. We showed you how these transactions inherit those dimension sets, if you will, and process those to the general ledger. And we showed you budgeting, we showed you Excel, we showed you Management Reporter, and we showed you different inquiries within D365.
Okay, so here we are now in the Power BI app. Okay, this is the last section of the demo, and this is the last analytical tool we're looking at. Okay, the other analytical tools we've looked at all serve different purposes and potentially different stakeholders within the business. This tool is, we talked about it as we went through the demo, allows us to do a lot of slicing and dicing based on different data filters. So for example, one of the big benefits of having the customers and the items as dimensions is we can then leverage those properties of customers and items and drill back into the general ledger voucher transaction data warehouse to determine profitability. So we're going to show you that. So the first screen we have up is basically just a grid form. Okay, I'm going to open the visualization. So if you've ever used Excel and any charts, a lot of the visualizations are similar or the same to Excel, and we can build different visualizations. For example, this is a table which looks like a grid. So I'm going to close this just to give us more screen space. The other thing that we did was we imported or synced data from the D365 database. Okay, this is the only part of the solution that may require some intervention from a customization integration standpoint from GraVoc and doing consulting. This is not just plug and play per se to get it formatted exactly in the nice way that you want it. But what we did was we brought in all the key data elements or tables or entities. Okay, so we talked through our demo yesterday, our GL vouchers. Okay, that was, we have all the fields there we can choose from. We have our customers, we have our main accounts, we have our products, we have our sales orders, and we have our sales order lines. So all those tables relate to each other based on those different key fields. Okay, so let's just quickly take a quick look at the GL transaction the vouchers. Okay, so I have two tabs. One I have where it's all the vouchers. Okay, it's vouchers for all the activity, and I put in a slicer which I can select. If I just wanted to look at all the purchase orders, okay, it immediately filters out the purchase orders, because purchase orders we don't use dimensions on. So but we can see that, you know, the PO number, who it was from, Sony, the vendor, etc. So I have one table that has just all your DRL transactions, just like we were looking at the voucher transaction inquiry window in D365. So you can do a number of different filters just like D365. Then I have one that I call GL vouchers just with dimensions. So if I look at my filters pane, okay, I filtered these on only I filtered these only on period ID, customer name, item short name in when I brought in those particular fields. So we have the same table, all right, and now we're looking at different filters. Okay, so let's say I just wanted to look at period 1. So that filters out period 1. Okay, and it brings me all the activity for period 1. If I just wanted to bring up Amazon, it brings up only data with Amazon. You see there's the customer ID Amazon and all the item numbers. So this is a nice way where I can drill down onto the detail of those voucher transactions, similar to what we looked at in D365, just a little bit slicker kind of a view. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my sales orders, because we have a lot of data to cover. So in sales orders is you have a header, you know, with the basic information about the sales order, and you have a detail, and those are aligned together, and they're linked through the voucher number, because you could have a sales order that you've invoiced multiple times with multiple voucher numbers. So that's the key. Anytime we click at the bottom of one of these grids, it will highlight all the activity. Now, what we have here is we have the sales order header, and we have the sales order details. Okay, so I have it sorted by amount. So that's the sales order amount. So if I want to look at the largest sales order, 176,000, if I just click on the voucher field, it filters out all the line items on that voucher, similar like what we looked at in the sales order, and then drill down to the line items. And I can see my item numbers. I can see how many I sold. I can see the unit price, the unit cost, total sales amount, the total cost, and then our profit for that particular item. So that's a kind of a nice way where I can drill down on details from a header information. Okay, same thing here with, you know, you see as I go down through the sales orders, it highlights the different details. Okay, now I'm going to take a look at sales lines. This is just all the sales lines here, and that is just all the detail. If I want to look at that, I can add some filters there. But now let's take a look at our customers. So our customers, I could create, all right, I create a little grid that shows me the customer ID. Okay, so here is, remember I talked about the vouchers and the customers. So on the vouchers, we're looking at the profit amount. What's the profit for that particular item? But we're linking back to the customer table to choose the customer ID, the customer name, the sales group name, and the segment name. Okay, so that's what I was talking about when we looked at the customer list. We can leverage those properties. So for example, if I want to put in a new chart, I'm going to show you how easy it is to put a new chart. I just highlight on this area. This area is called the canvas. So what we've looked at thus far is more of accounting information, which double entry accounting is more of a science. When we get into data analytics, is more of an art form. Different stakeholders have different viewpoints on how they want to slice and dice the data and make that decision-making area. So the Power BI is a more creative way for end users to look at the data in the way that suits them the most. Okay, so for example, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go choose a pie chart. Okay, so the pie chart just comes on the canvas in a grid. I'm just going to highlight it over to this area. I'm going to expand it a bit. Okay, so now it wants to know what is the value that I'm going to put on there, and I'm going to look at profit. So we know that profit is here. So I'm going to highlight profit. Well, I was highlighting the wrong one. So I'm going to highlight profit here. I'm going to delete that one that just put it. So you see my profit is $471,000. Okay, and you can see that aligns up with the grid form. Okay. So you see I have segments. So if I want to use my filter for the segment, I'm going to come up to my customer. I'm going to choose my segment name. And you see it adds in my segment. Very nice. Just totally automatic. Now, what's nice is it shows the segment name in the legend, retail, online, club. So if I chose my retail, you can see retail has 288,000, which is 61%. If I clicked on retail, retail drills down into, okay, I got to click on it. Retail then, it dims the other two pie charts, and it just drills into the retail customers, which is Best Buy and Walmart. And you can say I have a sales group named Chase Carpenter. He's the salesman for that. If I clicked on to my club, it just brings up the Costco. If I clicked on to the online, it just brings up the customer. So that's as quick as real nice quick way to look at our profitability. And that's how easy it is to create a chart. If I wanted to create another chart, I would just go in and choose, let me choose the donut chart. And I'll bring the donut chart over here. And maybe I want to look at the sales group names. And I want to look at the profitability there. Now I highlighted over here, so I'm going to highlight the grid and just put in a donut chart. So there's my donut chart. I'm going to get rid of this one here. Okay. So the donut chart shows me, okay, the different sales groups. Chase Carpenter has 288,000. He's 61%. Ted Howard is in the orange. If I clicked on Ted, you notice all this, everything on this particular canvas on this page is linked together, so it filters everything out. Kind of cool. Let's move on to products. So if I look at products, again, this is all kind of what flavor do you like as an end user? Excuse me. So here again, I like the use of grids. So I have a grid, and if I highlight a particular group, it separates out my visualizations. But if I come back here and I double click, it brings up everything again. Okay, so here on this particular tab, I have the products listed: product group, audio, category, headphones. We looked at those categories, and we're looking at those product groups. We have the item number, we have the product name, the brand, the buyer group, and the profit. Okay, so I can look at profit by category. I can look at profit by group and category. So there's a number of different ways to slice and dice the data based on how you want to generate that data. Now let's go to another tab. Let's look at customers and items. Now here's where it starts getting cool, because now the big driver that we've talked about is the matrix of customers and items, and determine that profitability and or sales forecasting or quotas. So we showed in a management reporter report how we can build that matrix based on dimensions. Now what we've done is we've built a listing of all the sales by product group, category, item number. And we've added what we call a ribbon chart by customer. Okay, we have the customer name over there as well. So we can look at by profit. That's the great thing about this. A lot of people analyze things by sales only, but now we can look at profit. What is these items and customers contributing to our bottom line? So we can see the S9 or SNY 900 item, which is, if I click on that, that is my Sony headphones. And I actually was surprised to see that the Sony headphones is the largest contributor to our margin. Okay, so you see if I click on the blue, it highlights, you see how to visualize it, item number SNY 900, customer name Amazon. So that item and customer contributes the most to our profit bottom line. Amazing. Okay, so let me double click on that, and it takes me back to all the items, sorry. Okay, now let me click on, so if I click on my next item, which is the Apple iPad, again, it shows, if I highlight the customers, moves it right up. So this ribbon chart kind of weaves a nice picture of what products and customers are giving us the most profitability. Let's move on to a new tab, segments. So I took that ribbon chart and I made it a little bit of a different view. Okay, so we've looked at, created that matrix that I talked about. Item numbers, customer names, then item numbers, business customer segments. And then I have the associated ribbon chart next to it. So if I see that, so if I looked at that profit margin total, you see it, I can highlight that contribution and you can see that the Sony headphone is number one, the Apple's number two. So the grid, if I highlight that, ties into the chart. Pretty nice. Let's go and take a look at another tab that we created, I just called it Customers 2, just to show you some other different things we can do. Now here is, a lot of people just like the visuals, the graphics, okay? So here's just a chart that we created, and it's just a simple bar chart. Again, we took the customer name from the customer table, and we took the profit from the GL table. So that's that link that we talked about, okay? So we can see a nice little bar chart. Or I can do it by segment name. We looked at that a bit. Or I can do it by sales group name. We looked at that a bit. I can create a card. A card is just one number that jumps out and says, it's like kind of a key profit indicator key performance indicator. It shows you, hey, what is the total profit? Or if I clicked on a group, it jumps right into the, just drills down into that particular number. And then lastly, we're going to look at another tab for products. So here is, a lot of times you might not remember that item number, okay? So we have that long name and we have that item short name. That helps us construct that dimension, the account name from the dimension. So if I look at the products, you see I choose item short name and I chose the profit, so I can click on it. It's an easier chart to read because I can see the whole number. So I got my tablet, my laptop, etc., and then it drills it down by category. If I click back over to here, I have my category by headphones, tablets. We've looked at that. I can drill in on that. I can drill out. I also have my product group, audio and computers. So if I choose on audio, that's going to drill down and only give me my audios, my headphones. If I drill down on computers, it's going to link down and only give me my tablets and laptops. You see, I got my tablets and laptops. So the beauty of Power BI is that once you have that data organized in an intelligent way, like we've seen in our demonstration by using the customer and items as dimensions, we can easily format graphs and visuals that make a lot of sense and help us see the data in a different light that may be harder to look on print reports and on inquiry screens. So that's our overview of the Power BI. We're just scratching the surface with the Power BI. Okay, you can see the capabilities that exist, and it's very user definable. Like I said, it's like an artist using a canvas. So we want to thank everybody for attending. We really enjoyed you taking time here. We hope you learned something. We're happy to take some questions. I just want to refer back to our roadmap, and you see that based on the financial dimensions, we're able to set up and configure the D365 system to handle all the processing of transactions, to feed into our data warehouse, which is the general ledger, and provide some amazing output as far as reporting. So thanks very much. And we're going to open it up for questions. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. So we appreciate your time. We know there was a lot of information that we covered. Hopefully it was informative for you. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So again, we want to thank you for participating. My name is Jim Lawhead. Again, I'm a solutions architect at GraVoc, and we're here to help you realize this solution if you are interested in pursuing it further. So thanks a lot and have a great rest of your day.